Hey guys, welcome back to Tap the Brakes. I am Mickye Castillo, and I so hope you are enjoying this journey, putting the Bible in chronological order and just talking about all these stories. So if you do, hit the like, subscribe, and share. All right, ready? Let's get to it. Okay, so this is episode 14, and we'll be starting in Exodus chapter 17. So we know that the people left the wilderness of, does anybody remember the name? Sin, the wilderness of sin. They finally ended up in Rephidim, but the people complained because there was no water for them to drink. So here we are in verse 2. So the people complained to Moses, "Give us water to drink." "Why are you complaining to me?" Moses replied. "Why are you testing the Lord?" But the people thirsted there for water and grumbled against Moses. They said, "Why did you bring us out of the land of Egypt, us and our children and our livestock, to just die of thirst?" Then Moses cried out to the Lord and said, "What should I do with these people? In a little while they're going to rise up and stone me." And the Lord answered Moses, "Go ahead of the people and take some of the elders of Israel with you. Take the staff that you struck the Nile with in your hand and go. And I'm going to stand there in front of you at the rock of Horeb. And when you strike the rock, water will come out of it and the people will drink." And Moses did this in the sight of the elders, and he named the place Massah, Massah, because the Israelites complained, and because they tested the Lord, saying, "Is the Lord among us or not?" So here you can see that Moses is very, very scared of the people. He was scared that they would rise up and kill him by stoning him. I mean, they just saw some of the greatest miracles ever, right? Coming up out of Egypt, the Red Sea parting, coming across on dry ground, right? And then looking back and seeing all the Egyptians in the sea and God collapsing the waters on top of them and killing all of their enemies. And then bringing them through the wilderness on this journey and God feeding them every single day with manna and quail. They knew God was providing for them. And we already read where some of the waters were bitter and Moses put the branch or the tree in it and the waters became sweet because Jesus is our living water. So anyways, these people got to see all these miracles, but yet here they are complaining, so much so that they're ready to rise up and stone Moses. And this is something that we're going to see, this behavior is something that we're going to see throughout the Old Testament. I mean, remember when God sent the prophets to them? They're the ones that killed the prophets. They didn't want to hear what it said. And unfortunately, it just gained momentum after that. And in the New Testament, we see that it unfortunately was the Jews that rose up and killed those that followed Christ. So they were the first persecutors of Christians or those that followed Christ even back then. So yeah, he was fearing them here. But anyways, the Lord did this mighty miracle for them again. He struck the rock and the water flowed out and the people drank. So this next part is kind of shady. The Israelites, of course, are coming out of Egypt and they were not trained, skilled warriors, right? They were just slaves in Egypt. They had not been trained in war just yet. Well, guess who come knocking at their back door ready to make war with them? Do you remember, if you've been studying along with us, a man named Amalek or the Amalekites? Well, this is like the grandsons of Esau. So they dwelt among the Dead Sea, along Mount Seir as well. So the Amalekites come to make war with the Israelites. Watch this, verse 8. At Rephidim, Amalek came and fought against Israel. Moses said to Joshua, "Select some of the men for us and go fight Amalek. Tomorrow I will stand on the top with God's staff, on the top of the hill or mountain with God's staff in my hand." And Joshua did as Moses had told him and fought against Amalek. While Moses, Aaron, and Hur went up to the top of the hill, while Moses held his hand, Israel prevailed. While Moses held up his hands, Israel prevailed. But whenever Moses put his hands down, Amalek prevailed. When Moses' hands grew heavy, they took a stone and put it under him, and he sat down on it. And Aaron and Hur supported his hands, one on each side, holding his hands steady until the sun went down. So Joshua defeated Amalek and his army with a sword. The Lord then said to Moses, "Write this down on a scroll as a reminder and recite it to Joshua. I will completely blot out the memory of Amalek under heaven." And Moses built an altar and named it, "The Lord is my banner." He said, "Indeed, my hand is lifted up toward the Lord's throne, and the Lord will be at war with Amalek from generation to generation." So this is the first mention of the dude named Joshua. Moses told Joshua to go select some warriors or men to fight against the Amalekite. So Joshua was evidently already showing some leadership skills or something like that. Or else why would he have been selected by Moses in this way for this task, right? And we saw that as long as Moses kept his hands raised, and I'm assuming this is just a public display of just surrendering to God, just to keep your hands raised, and I trust you and I surrender to God. But as long as Moses kept his hands raised, they prevailed in this battle. And when Moses dropped his hands, the Amalekites prevailed. So his armor bearers is what we know it to be called. They stood one on each side of Moses and lifted up his hand, and Joshua prevailed through God's help here. So chapter 18, and I'm paraphrasing here. Moses' father-in-law Jethro, the priest of Midian, heard about everything that God had done for Moses and his people Israel, and how the Lord had brought Israel out of Egypt. Now Jethro's father-in-law had taken Zipporah, Moses' wife, after he had sent her back, along with her two sons, Gershom and Eleazar. They came to him in the wilderness where he had encamped at the mountain of God. And he sent word to Moses, "I, your father-in-law Jethro, am coming to you with your wife and your two sons." So Moses went out to greet his father-in-law and bowed down to kiss him. And after, I'm going to paraphrase for just a minute, but after Moses told Jethro everything that the Lord had done, bringing them out of Egypt, and everything the Lord had done for them all up until this point, how God was fighting for them and just won this battle, and the quail and the manna and the drowning of the Egyptians in the Red Sea, Jethro says this, "Now I know that Yahweh is greater than all gods, because he did wonders when the Egyptians acted wrongly against Israel." Then Jethro, Moses' father-in-law, brought a burnt offering and sacrifices to God, and Aaron came with him and all the elders of Israel to eat a meal with Moses' father-in-law in God's presence. The next day Moses sat down to judge all the people, and they stood around Moses from morning until evening. And Moses' father-in-law saw everything that he was doing and asked him, "What is this thing that you're doing to your people? Why are you alone sitting as judge while all the people stand around you from morning until evening?" And Moses replied, "Because the people come to me and inquire of me about what God says. Whenever they have a dispute, it comes to me, and I make a decision between one man and another, and I teach them God's statutes and laws." Well, this did not please Jethro, and he set Moses straight. Verse 17, he said, "What you're doing is not good, Moses. You will certainly wear out both yourself and these people who are with you, because the task is too heavy for you. You can't do it alone. Now listen to me. I will give you some advice, and God be with you. You will be the one to represent the people before God and bring their cases before him. Instruct them about the statutes and the laws, and teach them the ways that they should live and the things that they must do. But you should select from all the people well and able men, God-fearing, trustworthy, and hating bribes." So take people that trust the Lord, God-fearing, well-abled, but those who hate taking bribes. Place them over the people as commanders of thousands and hundreds and fifties and tens, and they shall judge the people at all times. Then they can bring you the very important cases, and you can judge the big cases, and they will judge the minor cases. So I paraphrase there toward the end. So here you see the order and the structure concerning the chain of command, and that's a good thing. Jethro was trying to tell Moses, what in the world? There's, thousands and thousands and thousands of people, and he was just sitting there and trying to listen to one case after another case after another case, disputes, or what should we do about this, or my neighbor did this, and blah blah blah. And Jethro was like, "No way, tap the brakes, man. You've got to restructure this whole thing and put people over thousands of people, put people over hundreds, put people over tens and fifties and all that stuff, and let them judge all the small stuff, and then let them bring you the big stuff. And that's the way you can make this work, or you're going to wear yourself out and them as well." So he did that. And this is a good thing, but we will see how these elders and top officials eventually became some of the most evil and some of the most wicked and some of the most corrupt judges of God's law and his principles. But it started off well, as most things do, right? But I just wanted to point out something about Jethro. Do you remember what we discovered about Jethro? I just want to throw this in here for just a second. Remember out of the book of Judges where I pointed out Judges 1:16, it says, and the descendants of the Kenite, Moses' father-in-law, went up with Judah from the city of Jericho. Okay, so we know who the Kenites are. Those are the descendants of Cain. Okay. But if you click Jethro's name in the Hebrew, it really only states that he was a member of the tribe of the Kenites. It doesn't necessarily say he was a descendant of Cain, but it says that he was the member of the Kenites, of this tribe. So right now, I don't know if Jethro is a blood lineage of Cain or if he was just dwelling among this tribe of Kenites, if that makes sense. But either way, I think it's awesome that after Moses told Jethro all that God had done for them, Jethro finally acknowledges that Moses serves the God of all gods and that Jethro brought to the Lord a sacrifice. So even if he wasn't a believer before then about Moses' God being the most powerful, supreme God, now he is. And he brought a sacrifice to the Lord. So I just thought that was interesting to just throw in there. But anyways, chapter 19, starting at verse 2, it says, and they departed from Rephidim. They entered the wilderness of Sinai and camped in the wilderness, and Israel camped there in front of the mountain. Moses went up the mountain of God, and the Lord called to him from the mountain. This is what you must say to the house of Jacob and explain to the Israelites. Okay, so this next part, guys, is all the ifs. Pay attention to all the ifs in this next part because, there really were stipulations to God's providing for them and keeping them. So we'll start in verse 4. It says, you have seen what I did to the Egyptians and how I carried you on eagle's wings and brought you to me. Now, if you will listen to me and carefully keep my commandments, you will be my own possession out of all the peoples, although all the earth is mine. And you will be my kingdom of priests and my holy nation. Guys, tap the brakes for just a second. To me, it's like God is drawing a line in the sand. He is calling them all of them. Remember, there were 12 tribes, and he just said, you are all a kingdom of priests and a holy nation unto me. There was not yet this separation of just the Levites being the priests unto him. We're getting there and why that happened. But for now, God said, you're all a kingdom of priests unto me. Okay, so this next part is the coolest thing ever. God is about to show himself through the pillar of fire and clouds. They hear his voice as thunder, and this is a visual display of his communing with them. This is when it appears at this time the place where heaven met earth. So, chapter 19, verse 7, and after Moses came back, he summoned the elders of the people who sat before them and told them all the words that the Lord had commanded them. Then all the people responded together, we will do all that the Lord has spoken. So Moses brought the people's words back to the Lord. So here we have the people saying, we will do all of this. Tell the Lord, yes, like we're all on board. Let's do it. Then the Lord said to Moses, I am going to come to you in a dense cloud, so that the people will hear when I speak with you and will always believe you. Then Moses reported the people's words to the Lord, and the Lord said to Moses, go to the people and consecrate them today and tomorrow. They must wash their clothes and be prepared by the third day. For on the third day, the Lord will come down on Mount Sinai in the sight of all the people. Put boundaries for the people all around the mountain and say, be careful that you don't come up to the mountain or touch its base. Anyone who touches the mountain will be put to death. No hand may touch him. Instead, he will be stoned or shot with arrows. That's weird. No animal or man will live. When the ram's horn sounds a long blast, they may go up the mountain. Again, this is where they will see heaven meeting earth. A place holy, fearful, and glorious, all at the same time. A place where God met man and allowed it to be seen and understood by all of them. Well, kind of. It was veiled with a cloud, okay? So that they would know and believe there is only one God to be worshipped. So Moses went and told the people everything that the Lord had said. And in verse 15, he said to the people, "Be prepared by the third day. Do not have sexual intercourse with women." On the third day, when morning came, there was thunder and lightning and a thick cloud on the mountain, and a loud trumpet sound, so that all the people in the camp shouted. Then Moses brought the people out of the camp to meet God, and they stood at the foot of the mountain. Oh, wouldn't this be awesome to see? Mount Sinai was completely enveloped in smoke because the Lord came down on it in fire. Its smoke went up like the smoke of a furnace, and the whole mountain shook violently. As the sound of the trumpet grew louder and louder, Moses spoke, and God answered him in the thunder. The Lord came down on Mount Sinai at the top of the mountain. Then the Lord summoned Moses to come to the top of the mountain, and he went up. And the Lord directed Moses, "Go down and warn the people not to break forth and see the Lord, otherwise many of them will die. Even the priests who came near the Lord must purify themselves, or the Lord will break forth in anger against them." But Moses responded to the Lord, "The people cannot come up Mount Sinai, for you warned us, put a boundary around the mountain and consider it holy." And the Lord replied to him, "Go down and come back with Aaron. But the priests and the people must not break through to come up to the Lord, or he will break out in anger against them." So Moses went down to the people and told them. Guys, this would have been amazing to see and to feel. Have you ever, I guess maybe been in a movie theater or really at a red light, sitting in your car, and then boom, boom, this bass, this whatever pulls up beside you, or even with maybe thunder and lightning, and you literally feel it? Can you imagine how much more intense this scene would have been? I really wish I could go back in time and see this. I really, really do. But I can't, so whatever. Okay, so this next part, chapter 20, it's going to list all the 10 commandments. So it says, "Then God spoke all these words, 'I am the Lord your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the place of slavery. Do not have other gods besides me. Do not make an idol for yourself, whether in the shape of anything in the heavens above, or on the earth below, or in the waters under the earth. You must not bow down to them or worship them, for I, the Lord your God, am a jealous God, punishing the children for the father's sin to the third and fourth generations of those who hate me, but showing faithful love to the 1,000 generations of those who love me and keep my commandments." Think about that for a second. Here, God is saying he's going to punish the children for the father's sin up to the third and fourth generations. Wow. Now, eventually this does change. We'll read in a few weeks how God said, "I will no longer punish the children for the father's sin. From now on, I'm going to hold each person accountable for the sin that they commit," which is really good. A lot better, actually. But anyways, yeah, here, as it states right now, he's going to punish the children up to the third and fourth generation because of the sins of the fathers. But it says, "But those who love the Lord and keep his commandments, God will bless them up to 1,000 generations." So that's pretty awesome. Anyways, continue. "Do not misuse the name of the Lord your God, because the Lord will not leave anyone unpunished who misuses his name." Okay, guys, tap the brakes for just a second. Here is talking about don't use the Lord's name in vain. Meaning, don't "thus saith the Lordeth" if the Lordeth didn't saith. Right? That's exactly what that means. Don't get me wrong. A lot of people say using the Lord's name in vain is, when they say God and then bleep, and that's bad and terrible, and I would never do that. But that's not necessarily taking the Lord's name in vain. Taking the Lord's name in vain here is saying God said this when God did not say it. So, continue. He says, "Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. You are to labor 6 days and do all your work, but the seventh day is a Sabbath to the Lord your God. You must not do any work, you or your sons or your daughters or your male or your female slaves or your livestock or your foreigner who is within your gates. For the Lord made the heavens and the earth, the sea, and everything in them in 6 days. Then he rested on the seventh day. Therefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and declared it holy. Honor your father and your mother, so that you may have a long life in that land, and the Lord your God has given you. Do not murder, do not commit adultery, do not steal, do not give false testimony against your neighbor, do not covet your neighbor's house, do not covet your neighbor's wife, his male or his female slaves, his ox or his donkey, or anything that belongs to your neighbor. So guys, there it is. What is that called? That's called the 10 Commandments. So, verse 18, and all the people witnessed the thunder and the lightning, the sound of the trumpet, and the mountain surrounded by smoke. Then the people saw it. When the people saw it, they trembled and stood at a distance. You speak to us, and we will listen, they said to Moses, but don't let God speak to us, or we will die. Wow. Moses responded to the people, don't be afraid, for God has come to you to test you, so that you will fear him and will not sin. And the people remained standing at a distance as Moses approached the thick, dark cloud where God was. Wow. It says, then the Lord told Moses, this is what you are to say to the Israelites. You have seen that I have spoken to you from heaven. You must not make gods of silver to rival me. You must not make gods of gold for yourselves. You must make an earthen altar for me and sacrifice on it burnt offerings and fellowship offerings, your sheep and your goats as well as your cattle. I will come to you and bless you in every place where I cause my name to be remembered. If you make a stone altar for me, you must not build it out of cut stone. If you use your chisel on it, you will defile it. You must not go up to my altar on steps, so that your nakedness is not exposed on it. So, in other words, he said, don't cut with the chisel and hammer the stone for sacrifice, meaning just get one huge stone, and that is the stone to be used, uncut. And then it said, don't build steps going up to this either, because when the people are down here and the priest or whatever goes up there to make the sacrifice, his nakedness will be seen underneath his garment. So you can clearly see that what the Lord is telling them what to do and what not to do. So there were stipulations, again, for God's provisions. Chapter 21. So the other laws are put in place. And guys, to be quite honest, I'm not going to go and spend a lot of time unpacking all of this over the next few chapters. Number one, because some of them I don't understand why Moses set forth these particular laws. And number two, it's really, really boring. So if you want to read all of that, you can go and read all of these laws. But yeah, these laws, and you'll see, they caused a lot of controversy and debate among Christians even today. So we're going to talk about some of these things. I'm going to name a few of them, and like I said, you can go read all of them if you want. So starting at chapter 21, verse 1. And again, I've not listed all, just some. So if you're following along, you may, hey, wait, you didn't read this. I'm not going to name them all. Here we go. Now these are the ordinances you, Moses, shall set before the Israelites. If you buy a Hebrew servant as the result of a debt or theft, he shall serve 6 years, and in the 7th he shall go free, paying nothing. Then his master shall bring him to God, the judges and his agents. He shall bring him to the door of the doorpost, and shall pierce his ear with an awl, and he shall serve him for life. Whoever strikes a man so that he dies shall surely be put to death. But if he did not lie in wait for him, but God allowed him to fall into his hand, then I will appoint you a place to which he may flee for protection until duly tried. I guess that means that if he's innocent and he did it on an accident, that there's a place for him to go until the trial takes place. It's just kind of worded weird. And if it's an accident, there will be a safe place for him to flee to until the matter is resolved. Okay, that's kind of what that means. But whoever kidnaps a man, whether he sells him or is found with him in his possession, shall surely be put to death. Okay. And if a man strikes his servant or his maid with a rod, and he or she dies under his hand, he shall surely be punished. But if the servant lives on for a day or two, the offender shall not be punished, for he has injured his own property. If men contend with each other, and a pregnant woman interfering is hurt so that she has a miscarriage, yet no further damage follows, the one who hurt her shall surely be punished with a fine, paid to the woman's husband, as much as the judge determines. But if any damage follows, then you shall give life for life, eye for eye, tooth for tooth, hand for hand, foot for foot, burn for burn, wound for wound, and lash for lash. Meaning, if the baby dies, then you have to pay the fine for the loss of that child. I guess because you're ultimately losing a worker or a servant. But if the mother dies, then it's life for life. Wow. It says, if a man hits the eye of his servant or the eye of his maid so that it is destroyed, he shall let him go free for his eye's sake. And if he knocks out the manservant's tooth or the maidservant's tooth, he shall set him free for the tooth's sake. If an ox gores a man or a woman to death, then the ox shall surely be stoned, and its flesh shall not be eaten, but the owner of the ox shall be clear. But if the ox has tried to gore before, and its owner has been warned, but has not kept it closed in, and kills a man or a woman, the ox shall be stoned, and its owner shall be put to death. Meaning, if you know that this ox is doing this and this is kind of something he does, and you don't try to fence him in and keep him from doing that, then yeah, the ox will die and you'll die because you didn't prevent this. I don't know, guys. Just some hard things to talk about. If you beat your servant and you wound his eye, then set him free. And if you knock out his tooth or her tooth, then set him free. And I don't know. Why didn't Moses just tell him, don't do that at all? Don't beat them. Don't pierce his eye. Don't knock out his tooth. Stop this foolishness. I don't know, but that's this is some of the laws. Anyways, chapter 22, same thing. I get some of these, but some of them are like, huh? So let's unpack it. It says, if a man seduces a virgin not betrothed and lies with her, he shall surely pay a dowry for her to become his wife. If her father utterly refuses to give her to him, he shall pay money equivalent to the dowry of a virgin. You shall not allow a woman to live who practices sorcery. Whoever lies carnally with a beast shall surely be put to death, meaning whoever has sex with an animal. So why in the world would Moses be telling them not to have sex with a goat? I don't know. Is this behavior that they've seen before with these other nations, and so Moses is just telling them not to? Or is this a behavior that Moses is seeing happening and he's like, okay, guys, let's make some rules. Stop doing this. I don't know. Don't have sex with your goat. Ugh. Okay, he who sacrifices to any god but the Lord only shall utterly be destroyed. You shall not wrong a stranger or oppress him, for you were strangers in the land of Egypt. You shall not afflict any widow or fatherless child. If you afflict them in any way, or they cry at all to me, I will surely hear their cry. And my wrath will burn. I will kill you with the sword, and your wives shall be widows, and your children fatherless. Wow. So here it says, don't oppress a stranger because you were once strangers. Don't afflict these people. So I don't know. I get it. It's confusing. These laws are kind of confusing, guys. I'm not saying I have the answers. I'm just reading them to you. So maybe you can leave some comments here in the video and we can talk about it, okay? Do some research on your own and let's talk about it. Anyways, chapter 23. This lists out all the laws that totally make sense. Again, you can go through each of them and read them as you have time to study. This chapter also outlines how God wanted them to keep certain feasts and how to sacrifice and when to offer up the sacrifices unto Him. He explains how to come to Him and when to come to him. Then he says this to them with the understanding that they will indeed keep his commandments. So chapter 23, verse 20. Behold, I send an angel before you to keep and guard you on the way and to bring you to the place I have prepared. Give heed to him, listen to and obey his voice. Be not rebellious before him or provoke him, for he will not pardon your transgressions, for my name is in him. Just FYI, the Strong's defines name, my name is in him, as authority. My authority is in him, and my character. Who has God's honor? Who has God's authority? Who had God's character? Jesus. We know him as Jesus. Right? Jesus, for God so loved the world that he sent his only begotten Son. He wrapped his Son in flesh. The Word became flesh. Back then he was known as the Word, but we know him as Jesus. With God's authority, with his character, with his power. Are we seeing a type and shadow here of Jesus in the Old Testament? So we have another Bible study that I'll unpack for you that talks about who is the angel of the Lord, who is the word of the Lord. And I'm going to prove to you that that is, in fact, who we know as Jesus, but before it was the Word, before he became flesh. Anyways, we see this throughout the Old Testament that Jesus was right there with us. Not Jesus in the flesh as we know him in the New Testament, but Jesus the Word. Anyways, it says, but if you will indeed listen to and obey my voice and all that I speak, then I will be an enemy to your enemies and an adversary to your adversaries when my angel goes before you and brings you to the Amorites, the Hittites, the Perizzites, the Canaanites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites, and I reject them and blot them out. You shall not bow down to their gods or serve them or do after their works, but you shall utterly overthrow them and break down their pillars and images. You shall serve the Lord your God. Okay. He shall bless your bread and your water, and I will take sickness from your midst. None shall lose their young by miscarriage or be barren in your land. I will fulfill the number of your days. I will send my terror before you, and I will throw into confusion all the peoples to whom you shall come, and I will make all your foes turn from you in flight. And I will send hornets before you, which will drive out the Hivites, the Canaanites, the Hittites from before you. And I will not drive them out from you in 1 year, lest the land become desolate for the lack of attention. And the wild beast multiply against you. Little by little I will drive them out from before you until you have increased in numbers enough to take possession of the land. And I will set borders from the Red Sea to the Sea of the Philistines, and from the wilderness to the river Euphrates. For I will deliver the inhabitants of the land into your hands, and you shall drive them out before you. You shall make no covenant with them or with their gods. Listen to that. You shall make no covenant with them or with their gods. They shall not dwell in your land, lest they make you sin against me. For if you serve their gods, it will surely be a snare unto you. Okay. God is trying to warn them over and over not to do as the pagans do, and not to worship like them and like they're about to see how they worship their gods, and not to sacrifice like they sacrifice to their gods, and not to make idols like they have made idols. But they do. It's also important to note that at some point in time, the elders or the priests, who later became the Pharisees of the New Testament, thought that because Moses was in communion with God and received all of these laws that Moses told the people about, okay, they thought, I'm just saying, according to Jewish legends, they thought that because Moses was up on the mountain for 40 days and 40 nights, that there's got to be more laws than these. And there was evidently, according to them, oral laws that was passed down orally from generation to generation. They say these laws were passed in what was called the oral traditions or the oral laws of Moses. These laws eventually were written down after the destruction of Jerusalem in 70 AD, so thousands of years from this time that we're reading. This is what's called the Talmud or the Mishnah or the Zohar or the Gemara or Gemara or the Kabbalah. This is what modern Judaism teaches today. This is a whole nother rabbit trail, guys, of teaching that we can do at another time. And even though I understand some of these laws that Moses did give were controversial, what Judaism believes or teaches is that there was a whole mess of laws that Moses didn't write down, but that he gave his people orally over and over and over and over, and it was passed down and 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 passed down, and eventually got written down after the destruction of Jerusalem in 70 AD, so after Christ. And that's a study we can do all on its own. But many of these oral laws, I think you've probably heard about the Talmud or the Mishnah, those kind of books. Anyways, let's move on. Chapter 24. God said to Moses, "Come up to the Lord, you and Aaron, Nadab and Abihu," which was Aaron's two sons, "and 70 of Israel's elders, and worship at a distance. Moses alone shall come near to the Lord. The other shall not come near, and neither shall the people come up with him." Moses came and told the people all that the Lord had said, and all the ordinances, and all the people answered with one voice, "All that the Lord had spoken, we will do." Then he took the book of the covenant and read it in the hearing of the people, and they said, "All that the Lord has said, we will do, and we will be obedient." And Moses took blood and sprinkled it on the people and said, "Behold, the blood of the covenant which the Lord has made with you is in accordance to all these words." Then Moses, Aaron, Nadab, and Abihu, and 70 of the elders of Israel went up, meaning the mountain, and they saw the God of Israel. That is a convincing manifestation of his presence. And under his feet it was like a pavement of bright sapphire stone, like the very heavens in clearness. So it was very bright. And upon the nobles of the Israelites he laid not his hand to conceal himself from them, to rebuke their daring, or to harm them. But they saw the manifestation of the presence of God, and ate and drank. And the Lord said to Moses, "Come up to me into the mountain, and be there, and I will give you tablets of stone with the law and with the commandments which I have written, that you may teach them." So Moses rose up with Joshua his attendant, and Moses went up to the mountain of God. And Moses went up into the mountain, and the cloud covered the mountain, and the glory of the Lord rested on Mount Sinai, and the cloud covered it for 6 days. On the 7th day God called to Moses out of the midst of the cloud. The glory of the Lord appeared to the Israelites like devouring fire on the top of the mountain. Moses entered into the midst of the cloud and went up the mountain, and Moses was on the mountain for 40 days and nights. So does anyone remember what the Israelites did while Moses was up on this mountain speaking with God? Let's read it. I'm not going to give it away. Let's just read it. Chapter 25. And the Lord said to Moses, "Speak to the Israelites that they take for me an offering from every man who gives it willingly and ungrudgingly with his heart. You shall take my offering. This is the offering you shall receive from them: gold, silver, bronze, blue, purple, scarlet, and fine twined linen, and goat's hair, ram skin, tanned red, goat skin, dolphin, or porpoise skins, acacia wood, oil from the light, spices for anointing oil, and sweet incense, onyx stones, and stones for setting in the ephod and in the breastplate. Let them make me a sanctuary, that I may dwell among them. And you shall make it according to all that I show you, the pattern of the tabernacle or dwelling, and the pattern of all the furniture in it. So God says, you shall make it according to what I will show you, the pattern of the tabernacle or dwelling, and the pattern of all the furniture in it. Now, this next part is very important. God tells Moses in great detail how to build the ark and his tabernacle. God explains to him what to put inside the tabernacle, how to build it, and what all this represents. We will study this in detail when we study the tabernacle and the blood, which is another study. But here are a few scriptures that popped out at me when I was reading this chapter. So verse 16 says, and you shall put inside the ark the testimony, which is the 10 commandments, which I will give you. And there I will meet with you. And from above the mercy seat, from between the two cherubs that are upon the ark of the testimony, I will speak intimately with you of all which I will give you in the commandments to the Israelites. So chapter 26 and 27. Again, it's more detailed on what and how to make the curtain that separates the Holy of Holies leading into where the Ark of the Covenant was, along with the oils and the fragrances and the spices and detail of all the golden lampstands and the instruments of worship that are placed in the tabernacle. Then the Lord said to Moses in verse 21, in the tent of meeting, outside the veil which sets apart the testimony, Aaron and his son shall keep it burning from evening until morning before the Lord, and it shall be a statute to be observed on behalf of the Israelites throughout their generations. So chapter 28 talks about the garments of Aaron and the priest and how they were to look, what is to be upon them. And check this out. God said to Moses that he will impart skill and wisdom and all craftsmanship into those that he wants in order to make all that God says according to his desire. So verse 1 of chapter 28, from among the Israelites, take your brother Aaron and his sons with him, that he may minister to me in the priest's office, even Aaron, Nadab, and Abihu, Eleazar, and Ithamar, which are Aaron's sons, and you shall make for Aaron your brother sacred garments, appointed official dress set apart for special holy services, for honor and for beauty. Tell all who are expert, whom I have endowed with skill and good judgment. God said, who I have endowed with skill and good judgment, that they shall make Aaron garments to sanctify him for my priesthood. See, guys, this is why I think that this secret knowledge that the fallen angels had taught man is really knowledge from heaven, and that God would eventually impart this skill and this knowledge into his people to be used for good. But see, when the fallen angels came, they taught man all of this wickedness and these secret knowledge or whatever from heaven to be worked for evil and for destruction. As we have already read in the book of Enoch, remember that? Knowledge like the mixing of roots for medical purposes, also used for divination and sorcery, metallurgy or the working of metals in the earth, eventually used for weapons of war and destruction. The fallen angels taught alchemy and the sacred sciences of charting the stars and fortune tellings and abortion and seduction with makeup and perfumes and all of this wickedness. And yes, they taught them pharmakia or medicines that can be used for bad. We know that medicines can be used for good, but it can also be used for bad and cause people to become addicted and strung out in their head and ruin their lives. So anyway, my voice is getting a little hoarse. But God continues to tell Moses all about the breastplate and the priest who are to wear the breastplate. And I'm going to put up some pictures for you. This goes hand in hand, just so you know, with our study on who was Lucifer before he fell. So I'm going to do that when we start really unpacking the Levitical priest and who they were. But look at this, these pictures here about how these priests were to wear their garments and this breastplate that God is talking about. It's pretty cool here. In chapter 29, talks all about how Aaron and his sons, who are the priests, are to be consecrated and set apart for the services unto the Lord. Again, throughout the upcoming studies, we will unpack this bit by bit to get to a better understanding of the office of the priesthood and all of its responsibilities. Why Aaron's sons were called to be priests unto the Lord. meaning not just his 4 sons right here, but eventually the entire tribe of Levi are going to be singled out and called unto the Lord to be priest unto him. So we're going to talk about that. Why is that? Chapter 29 ends with this, and I will sanctify the tents of the meeting. Let's see, I'm in verse 44. And I will sanctify the tent of meeting and the altar, and I will sanctify also both Aaron and his sons to minister to me in the priest's office, and I will dwell among the Israelites and their God, and I will and they shall know that I am the Lord their God, who brought them forth out of the land of Egypt, that I might dwell among them, and I am the Lord their God. And chapter 30 continues to outline how they are to sacrifice and who out of each tribe is to bring the sacrifice to Aaron, and how they are to wash and purify and to do all of these customs as they set up the tabernacle. And then Exodus 30 at the very end, I think it's verse 38. It doesn't let me copy and paste sometimes the exact scripture number that I'm reading, but it says, and the incense which you shall make according to its composition, you shall not make for yourselves. It shall be to you holy to the Lord. Whoever makes any like it for perfume shall be cut off from his people. Wow. So chapters, and I said that to say you can see how sacred and holy all of these instruments and the oils and the spices are to the Lord, and how he instructed them exactly what to do. There was no misunderstanding as to what and how God wanted them to come before him. And I say this because we're going to see how these priests and the workers of the tabernacle became very sloppy indeed. And God got them. God really did get them, but we're getting there. And again, God imparted all of this skill and craftsmanship inside of them. That is just awesome to me. Because like I said, they were just slaves in Egypt. And God said, I will impart into them those that I have called to build the Ark of the Covenant, to put the tabernacle together, to make the curtain of the Holy of Holies, and how to make the oils and the spices and all that stuff. Anyways, and the Lord said to Moses, see, I have called by name Bezalel, son of Uri, the son of Hur, from the tribe of Judah. And I have filled him with the Spirit of God, in wisdom and ability, in understanding and intelligence, and in knowledge, and in all kinds of craftsmanship, to devise skillful works, to work in gold and silver and in bronze, and in cutting of stones for setting, and in carving of wood, and work in all kinds of craftsmanship. See, God imparted this into them, this knowledge and understanding for his good, for his glory. And that's not what the fallen angels did. They imparted this wisdom and this understanding into people to be used of evil and not to glorify God. Anyways, it says, and behold, I have appointed with him Ahilabab, son of, these names, Ahisamach. Anyways, of the tribe of Dan, and to all who are wise-hearted, I have given wisdom and ability to make all that I have commanded you. The tent of meeting, the ark of the testimony, the mercy seat that is in it, the furnishings of the tent, the table of the showbread, and the utensils, and the pure lampstand with all of its utensils, the altar of incense, the altar of burning offerings, the altar of burnt offerings with all of its utensils, the laver and its base, the finely worked garments, the holy garments for Aaron, the high priest, and for his sons to minister as priest, and the anointing oil and incense of sweet spices for the holy place. Guys, I'm putting on the screen all of these pictures. Look at these instruments and how detailed they are. And even the Ark of the Covenant. That's just amazing. And the Lord said to Moses, say to the Israelites, truly you shall keep my Sabbath, for it is a sign between me and you throughout your generations, that you may know that I am the Lord, sanctifying you, setting you apart for myself. You shall keep the Sabbath, therefore, for it is holy to you. Everyone who profanes it shall surely be put to death. For whoever does work on the Sabbath shall be cut off from among his people. 6 days may work be done, but on the 7th is the Sabbath of rest, sacred to the Lord. Whoever does work on the Sabbath day shall surely be put to death. You see how the Lord is reiterating this over and over. Guys, they knew. They knew that the Sabbath was holy, and this was a commandment of God. And I keep stressing that because, some would say, because we're going to read a story here in a little bit, that a man went out and worked on the Sabbath and he was cutting sticks or picking up sticks or whatever it was, and that God said kill him. Well, he did this in outright defiance because God was saying over and over and over, no work to be done on the Sabbath. Keep it holy. No one is to do any work. And yet he did it anyways. He had no regard and no respect for God and for his commandments. And that's why he was put to death. But people want to blame, oh, God is so mean for killing this guy for picking up sticks. No, it wasn't just for picking up sticks. It was for flat out rebellion against the laws of God that he was trying to establish with them. Okay. Anyways, now we're going to go into chapter 32. It jumps back to when Moses went up on the mountain and stayed for these 40 days. So yeah, it just did a jump and now we're jumping back. Just does. Anyways, what happened with Aaron and the people at the base of the mountain? Do y'all remember? Do y'all know this story when Moses was gone for just 40 days? Oh, okay. Listen to this. So I'm going to read it in just a second, but let me read this real quick. God eventually separated the Levites to be priests unto him. It wasn't originally the Levites, but because of the disobedience of the Israelites as a whole, God pulled out of them a tribe to be set apart unto him for his servants as priests, ministers and scribes and workers of the temple, etc. These people were all the Levites. Again, Levi is the third son from Jacob and Leah. We read about all of his sons that he had. Remember, he had 12 sons, one daughter. I say 12 and I hold it 10 fingers. 12 sons and one daughter. It says, on the day that Moses went up to receive the 10 commandments, the people could no longer wait for him to come back down from the mountain. So guess what they did? Uh-oh. Let's read it. Chapter 32. When the people saw that Moses delayed to come down from the mountain, they gathered together to Aaron and said to him, up, make us gods to go before us. For this Moses, the man who brought us out of the land of Egypt, we do not know what has become of him. Guys, he was only gone for 40 days. And they already wanted Aaron to make them a god, an idol to be worshipped. What is going on? It was only 40 days and they wanted an idol. Wow. So Aaron replied, take the gold rings from the ears of your wives and your sons and your daughters and bring them to me. So all the people took the gold rings from their ears and brought them to Aaron. And he received the gold at their hand and fashioned it with the graving tool and made it into a molten calf. And they said, these are your gods. What? O Israel, which brought you up out of the land of Egypt. And when Aaron saw the molten calf, he built an altar before it. And Aaron made the proclamation and said, tomorrow shall be a feast to the Lord. Are you kidding me? And they rose up early the next day and offered burnt offerings and brought peace offerings. And the people sat down to eat and drink and rose up early. And the Lord said to Moses, go down, for your people whom you brought out of the land of Egypt have corrupted themselves. And they have turned aside quickly out of the way which I have commanded them, and have made them molten calves to be worshipped, and sacrificed to it, and said, these are your gods, O Israel, that brought you out of the land of Egypt. And the Lord said to Moses, I have seen this people, and behold, it is a stiff-necked people. Now therefore let me alone, and that my wrath may burn against them, and that I may destroy them. But I will make you a great nation. So God was saying, hey, I'm fixing to kill them all because I just told them never to do this. This is why he showed them and brought them through the Red Sea and provided manna and quail and clean drinking water. And This is why he showed them who he was as Moses went up, on the mountain before, and they saw him through the cloud, but they saw God speaking to Moses. They knew that it was the Lord, and they agreed. We will do this. We will keep these commandments. All is well. Well, unless 40 days pass and we want an idol. And Aaron said, hey, let's do it. Let's just make a golden calf. I am so upset right now. My voice is going out, but I'm going to finish this study. I just can't. Like, seriously, I can't. I can't understand this story. So God wanted to kill him. And then he told Moses, I will just make a people out of you. Let's just start all over. And your people, your kids, I will call them unto me. But Moses besought the Lord, his God, and said, Lord, why does your wrath blaze hot against your people, whom you have brought forth out of the land of Egypt with great power and might of hand? So wait a minute. Remember when God just said, hey, the people, your people that you brought out of Egypt, yeah, they're going crazy. They're losing their mind over here. Moses is like, hold up, God. These are your people that you brought up out of the land. Anyways, why should the Egyptians say, for evil he brought them forth to slay them in the mountain and consume them from the face of the earth? Moses was like, so if you do this, then the Egyptians are going to be like, yeah, God brought them out of here and done all these miracles only to kill them because they turned away from him. So what good was that? That's what Moses is saying. He says, turn from your fierce wrath and change your mind concerning this evil against your people. Earnestly remember Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, or Israel, your servants, to whom you swore by your own self and said to them, I will multiply your seed as the stars of heaven, and all this land that I have spoken of will I give to your seed, and they shall inherit it forever. Then the Lord turned from his evil, which he had thought to do to his people. And Moses turned and went down from the mountain with the 2 tablets of the testimony in his hand, tablets that were written on both sides. And the tablets were the work of God. The writing was the writing of God, graven upon the tablets, or engraved upon the tablets. And when Joshua heard the noise of the people as they shouted, he said to Moses, there is a noise of war in the camp. But Moses said, it is not the sound of shouting for victory, neither is it the sound of the cry of defeat, but the sound of singing that I hear. And as soon as he came near to the camp, he saw the calf and the dancing. And Moses' anger blazed hot, and he cast the tablets out of his hand and broke them at the foot of the mountain. And he took the calf they had made and burned it in the fire, and ground it into powder, and scattered it upon the water, and made the Israelites drink it, because it was very, very, very bitter. And Moses said to Aaron, what did this people do to you, that you have brought such great sin upon them? And Aaron said, let not the anger of the Lord blaze hot. You know the people, that they are set for evil. For they said to me, make us gods which shall go before us. As for this Moses, the man that brought us out of the land of Egypt, we do not know what has become of him. I said to them, those who have any gold, let them take it off. So they gave it to me. Then I cast it into the fire, and there came out a calf. Just poof. Then Moses saw that the people were unruly and unrestrained. For Aaron had let them get out of control, so that they were a derision of object of shame among their enemies. Wow. Then Moses stood at the gate of the camp and said, whoever is on the Lord's side, let him come to me. So now, Aaron's like, well, they made me do it. And I told them to give me all their gold and their earrings and everything that they had. And I threw it into this fire, and then poof, there's a calf, right? Whatever. Anyways, so Moses is saying, all right, whoever's on the Lord's side, maybe those who didn't participate, let them come to me. And all the Levites, the priestly tribe, gathered together to him. And he said to them, thus saith the Lord God of Israel, every man put his sword on his side, and go in and out of the gate throughout the camp, and slay every man his brother, and every man his companion, and every man his neighbor. And the sons of Levi did according to the words of Moses, and there fell of the people that day 3,000 men. And Moses said to the Levites, by your obedience to God's command, you have consecrated yourselves today as priests to the Lord, each man at the cost of each man against his own son and his own brother, that the Lord may restore and bestow his blessings upon you this day. The next day Moses said to the people, you have sinned a great sin, and now I will go up to the Lord. Perhaps I can make atonement for your sin. So Moses returned to the Lord and said, oh, these people have sinned a great sin and have made themselves gods of gold. Yet now, if you will forgive their sin, and if not, blot me, I pray you, out of your book which you have written. Meaning, I pray you forgive them, but if you don't, then kill me too. Blot me out too, because I don't want to do this. But the Lord said to Moses, whoever has sinned against me, I will blot him out, not you, out of my book. But now go and lead the people to the place which I have told you. Behold, my angel will go before you. Nevertheless, in the day when I punish, I will visit their sin upon them. And the Lord sent a plague upon the people because they made the calf which Aaron fashioned for them. Wow, you can see that this is why the Levites were now separated unto him. Because remember when Moses said, whoever did not participate in this, whoever is really on the Lord's side, raise your hand. And it was only the tribe of Levi that raised their hand saying, I'm not for all this. And so Moses consecrated them and said, okay, now put a sword in your hand and go kill all those that participated. If it's your brother, if it's your neighbor, if it's whoever, kill them. We're going to make an example out of this because God said not to worship me as the pagans. This is a calf. This was Moloch. Remember the bull with the horns and the sun and all this stuff? This was what they were used to. They were worshiping the pagan god and saying it was the Lord. Do you hear that? They erected a pagan god and said, this is the God that brought us out of Egypt. Are you kidding me? So anyways, the Levites were called to go kill all those people that did this. And that's why the Levites now are separated unto him as an entire tribe to be a holy nation as priests and workers in the temple for God. Okay, guys, let's end with our pop quiz. Number 1, the people left Egypt and traveled through the wilderness of sin, S-I-N. Number 2, the first complaint of the people was about what? Remember? The water to drink. Yeah. Number 3, what did Moses do to the rock in order to get water? He struck it. Number 4, who was Moses afraid of that would kill him or stone him? Remember, it was his own people. He was afraid of his own people. Number 5, who came to fight against the Israelites as they came out of Egypt? Remember, it was the Amalekites, descendants of Esau. Okay, as number 6, as long as Moses did what? They won this battle against the Amalekites. Remember? As long as Moses kept his hands lifted. Number 7. What was the name of the altar Moses built after this victory with the Amalekites? Do you remember? The Lord is my banner. Number 8. What did Jethro tell Moses concerning the people and the elders? He said, place trustworthy people over the thousands, the hundreds, the fifties, the tens to be judges. Number 9, what mountain was Moses on when he received the 10 commandments? Mount Sinai. Number 10, the Lord displays himself upon the mountain. How? With smoke and fire and thunder, and the mountain was shaking, and trumpets. Remember the trumpets sounded? Okay, number 11. What reason did Moses tell the people that the Lord showed or displayed himself in this manner? Like why? What reason did God tell the people that he was going to display himself in this manner? Maybe that was worded wrong, but anyways, that the people would be tested so that they would fear him and that they would not sin and they would know that he alone was God. Number 12, yeah. Chapter 32 outlines what tribe to be set apart for the priesthood. The tribe of Levi. Number 13, why did God choose them? Well, because they did not worship the golden calf and they raised their hand and said, I will be on the Lord's side. Number 14, how many Israelites died as a result of worshiping this golden cow? 3,000. Number 15, who killed them? Who killed these people? The Levites. Okay, that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed this study. I will see you next time.